Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be playing... Wait, what's this? This isn't Victoria 3. This is the Divergences mod for Victoria 3, which we're going to be taking a look at today. It is available in the Steam library under Divergences, and coming into it, this mod is probably the favorite mod I've taken a look at. I've played a little bit of it. I haven't played anything too in-depth of it, because I would want to, record a rather larger or longer sort of run, but what this does is it changes the entire history of the world. There's a ton of new lore, a ton of new, like events, and like these types of things, or maybe not a ton, but there's a decent number of new events and journal entries and these sorts of things. And from a gameplay perspective, relative to vanilla, to my knowledge, and also asking on their Discord, the only thing they change is there is now feudal-based army, and this isn't even a very good law. It just is necessary for kind of whatever lore they have in place at the time, which leaves us with what is basically just like the standard vanilla experience, just way shooken up in a bunch of different ways. Right when you go to start a game, you can get a feel for how everything in terms of the countries themselves is different, because every single one of these has, you can select and earn achievements somehow, with all these new countries, and they all are just different countries in this new mod. Aragon's around, the Japanese shogunate's way bigger and stronger, Bohemia is around, and they're poised. There is some localization for Bohemia to become the emperor of the HRE. My understanding is it's actually pretty hard to do, with the mod balance as it stands right now. Polish-Lithuania is around, the Mughal empires are around. We have the Belgian Confederation, the dual monarchy, who's the biggest kid on the block. Burgundy never left, certainly never left our hearts, and you just have an enormous amount of options. Russia hasn't been formed yet, all these sorts of things. We're going to take a closer look at some of these. Looking at the country rankings is kind of a good sort of indicator of who's the strongest, obviously, but who's probably going to have a lot of localization or unique things attributed or involved in them and these sorts of things. And just taking a quick look, it has shaken up quite a bit. Big part of that is, of course, that the dual monarchy is the combination of France and England, but they start out with some struggles at the beginning. They have the Anglois dilemma, or Anglos, however this is pronounced, where they have to decide between French and English, and they also have kind of a hybrid culture of Anglois, or trying to get them all. They have some penalties, this sorts of thing. I believe there's a resolution to this if you can kind of manage to swing it, but you notice there is the Anglois culture kind of sneaking in here. And what's also notable about, UK or UK, the rough equivalent, is that there's really not a lot of colonization that has happened at the start, or there isn't a ton of British subjects. And so, if you wanted to play in India, in Victoria 3, but you just it's the East India Company or Punjab, or this is the two options. Now there's a lot more stuff going on in regards to that specifically, and also, the Mughals start out pretty strong at a rank 13, so if you wanted a strong Indian start, that might be a fun one. Poland starts out with a unique event chain, which is named this. I don't know why I selected them to highlight, because I can't pronounce that, but this cements in, you either have to choose between, getting rid of the nobility or cementing the nobility, and it's a very interesting modifier in here. Diplomatic plays are blocked until Golden Liberty entry is resolved. So if we click this, we will see the Golden Liberty entry is going to be, we have to either, completely really kneecap the Magnate, which is a unique interest group for Poland, or we have to bring them into power, and they have, a sort of unique view on things. I believe, I haven't taken a close look on some Sarmatism, but this is, again, interesting localization for this country that is not a playable country, at least at the start of the game, here in Victoria 3. So Burgundy, the second largest country, doesn't start out with a unique event or journal entry, but what they do have is some unique decisions, or some decisions that look a little familiar. They have one to expand the East India Company in here, this area. Also in the Cape, where they have a little bit more. So they have this colonization, they have this, and also the one that might look familiar, expand the East Indies administration, which is kind of rollover from the Netherlands. And so they are the somewhat present, colonial power in what's going on. New Granada, I think, is a subject, if I'm not mistaken, of, yes, here we have it, they are a subject of Spain, and Spain is also looking a little bit more caked up these days in this mod. Speaking of Spain, it actually looks like they're involved in a revolt at the very start of the game with the Andino revolt against Gran Colombia, which is up here. They have this event, Viva España, the Andino revolt, and we can see that the revolt is against New Toledo in Colombia, and so this might be the breaking away. I imagine you as the player can kind of rein this in and be quite strong as a Spain sort of start, given that you will have access to the subjects, much in the way that the UK starts off with a ton of subjects, you know, in the East India Company in vanilla. And so this should be a bit interesting. Bohemia is also an interesting one because you will have the opportunity to create the Holy Roman Empire for the first time. The Holy Roman Empire has never been united and will require a strong leader. It was never torn apart by Napoleon. It was never united in the first place, and so you can try and create it. Now, my understanding from perusing their Discord is that this is generally regarded as something that is difficult to do because you have to subjugate basically everyone in a 12-year period, but it might be an interesting challenge, you know, to try and create this Holy Roman Empire and, you know, beyond. You have to consolidate the borders and centralize the empire in order to do this. Now, taking a look more over here in Asia, you will see there's kind of a lot of mid-sized powers, which creates more of an interesting dynamic for expanding and looking to play local in these areas. Like Mughal Empire is a strong start, but I'm sure you could start as one of these more minor types of powers and look to make some serious moves. Some of these are in the Scandinavian market at the start. That's some interesting lore I'm not aware of. But Jing in particular, and I'm assuming Qing also has this event for China reunification. And so if you wanted to, you know, do this sort of thing, this could be interesting. I'm assuming these guys also have it, so you can kind of choose your power level. And then moving over a little further east, where the sun rises, we have Japan looking quite a bit more caked up and ready to go. And they probably have a pretty nice ingress here into Korea. I assume they have claims on Korea or can get claims on Korea. Let's just take a closer look at Japan. Now, Japan's a little one that I can't quite make sense of exactly what's going on here because we're already an empire. Komei's in charge. And the samurai are already gone here. This is the armed forces and the Imperial Way Party. And we still have, though, the Honorable Restoration. So I'm not sure exactly the state of affairs with Japan, but they do not look to have any sort of localization particular to them in terms of events. They might have claims here. I'm not sure, or you might have to do the honorable restoration as you normally do in vanilla to get the claims so that you can invade Korea, but there's no big bad Qing to defend Korea here, and so this can be more of an interesting route if you were looking to play the, you know, attacking Japan, but also up in the north, this isn't colonized yet, so you can do a little bit of colonizing as Japan too, all the way over to Siberia. It is not presently colonized, and so Japan will have a unique kind of opportunity to colonize this way, to expand into China, and also colonize over here because the north is not fully colonized or even close here in Canada, which can present some interesting opportunities here for Japan. So the situation in Australia is a bit interesting as well. We do have Burgundy colonizing, of course, here, but we also have, you know, a Catholic with primary culture Zhoro, which I'm not sure exactly what this refers to. It looks like they share a cultural trait with China, so it looks like China decided to colonize instead of closing their borders completely, but this implosion has left these guys to their own devices, I'm assuming. We have the Mahayana, we have the Catholics, and we have the Sunni over here, all of which are the primary culture which apparently shares some ancestry here with Han Chinese, Sinosphere, East Asian. And so this is a bit interesting, but what's more interesting about Australia, and this is something that has changed quite a bit from vanilla, is there's actually resources in Australia. Specifically, there's also some unique sort of things here, but there's a great abundance of more resources here. Specifically, if you look at the arable land, there's virtually no arable land in Australia in vanilla, and I think that this is insane that a continent so large has such a low arable land count, and this is one of the changes that's pretty significant in this mod in regards to resources. The other change that's pretty significant is in the Belgian Confederation, which just has way more iron and coal than it normally does, and these are the ones I've been able to notice. If you wanted to take a look and try and find some more of these, you can come into, you know, looking at these sorts of things. Specifically, if you wanted to look at agriculture, let's say, almost I think every place that can produce agriculture can produce cattle. And so if we take a look here, we can see highlights of the map of what the arable land is likely looking like everywhere. Like Bengal might be an interesting start, you know, they start out with a ton of arable land, but relatively small. And this major change here in Australia makes Australia much more playable than it is in vanilla if you specifically wanted to play that region. Also notice here, Texas has been split up, that's a thing, and so has California if I'm not mistaken, yeah. And so there's several changes, you know, to resources, but this is not a game mechanics change as much as it is, you know, on the other side of things. Unfortunately, you can't sort by gold, but it does look like there's a little bit more gold here in Australia as well, making Australia like much more playable as a region than it is in vanilla. Now, the New World specifically seems to present like a lot of interesting choices of where to play, and also, again, kind of middling-sized countries where no one is huge, which gives you opportunity to like play the game a little bit. Very interesting here is Coup, which is somehow recognized. Unlike China, they do have a Chinese culture here, or they share ancestry, but they're somehow recognized, and there isn't any flavor text, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. We, of course, have Japan fooling about in Alaska. We have what looks like a better opportunity to play Native Americans than you have in vanilla with the Rohunst, however this is pronounced. I believe that this is indigenous American heritage, but you have some room to kind of move and shake a little, maybe get some colonization done, maybe do some stuff a little bit easier than the Indian territories. Vinland is, you know, broken free from Scandinavia. The Belgian Confederation broke free from Belgium, if I recall correctly. Again, extra steel and iron for them. We have the Plantengia, which is, you know, 5th rank major power. I believe it's the strongest power here in the Americas. That is a descendant, I believe, from the dual monarchy here, or they broke off from the dual monarchy, but it is difficult to tell because we don't have any sort of flavor here. We have Grand Colombia and New Toledo trying to make an escape from Spain. Grand Colombia, maybe this is a winnable war if the player controls it, and then you can kind of have this big Mexico thing going on where you already start off with Tejas, and you look to expand. And then we have, of course, just a smattering of different options, and I think the availability of options is particularly nice, and also very notably, the Incan Empire is present if you wanted to, again, play the natives and this sort of thing up here in North and South America. Is less apparent some sort of changes in regards to what's going on in Africa. Mosi is definitely here. Fuda-Jalan's way larger. Big contiguous mass, which gives you a good opportunity if you play as any one of these to unite, you know, kind of this region in Africa here, extending even into Ethiopia. Ethiopia starts off with 3 wars simultaneously, which is a bit interesting and awkward, I suppose. I'm not sure if they win that. It looks like they probably do, because just looking at the battalion size of the 3, and then Ethiopia, it looks like Ethiopia is probably, you know, poised to take all of this, and so maybe Ethiopia is a particularly interesting start, or an accelerated start relative to vanilla. And then you have this, what's going on here in South Africa, which is a bit different. I assume there's still gold here, and there's more choices. Again, there's no Zulu, or there's Zulu, and so this might be interesting. Scandinavia's kind of replaced Portugal in their role here, but other than that, I'm not sure that Africa is too much different, other than it's just much more left alone, at least at the very start here, by the European powers, who seem a little bit more involved in European affairs. Looking into the Middle East and Central Asia, it's notable that Russia has not yet been united. There is an event sort of thing to unite Russia. Again, this event kind of comes with, similar to the dual monarchy event and some of the other events, it actually comes with some penalties while you try and, you know, get things in order and try and get to where you're supposed to be. But unifying Russia could be an interesting one, or resisting unification if you want to play as one of these guys. I'm not sure how playable that is, but it looks like minor power, he looks relatively strong here in Moscow, and, you know, there's kind of a smattering of power. Kind of scrolling down a little bit, it looks like you can form Persia, probably, if you want to, as long as Persia's a formable, but you can, you know, make a lot more, again, these middling sized powers where you're going to have opportunities to expand and play and like try and do stuff in a way that is going to be a lot different than vanilla. You know, unifying Arabia might be easier. I love how they cleaned this up too. You know, instead of having the like 6 countries stretched across the bottom, they just have 2. I consider that an improvement. You know, I don't know what all this is about. There might be some unique localization for this. Just these kind of one-state minors over here. But yeah, that is kind of, you know, in my mind, a good summary of what's going on. Just kind of taking a closer look at the mod. I think it's a very interesting mod. It looks like a lot of fun. I've played it a little bit. You could also play as Macedonia if you want to be Alexander the Great. But overall, I think it is kind of gives you the vanilla gameplay experience, because as far as I can tell, all the mechanics are the same, with the exception of this feudal-based army thing, which isn't even very good, or it's not good at all. It's the vanilla gameplay with a whole new set of, you know, history and, you know, power rankings. Everything's a little bit different. Instead of England sticking their finger in your pie, it'll be the dual monarchy, except the dual monarchy doesn't have a lot of native interests everywhere, and so maybe that experience is also improved. Also very notably, almost everywhere you would want to play, there's a lot of medium strength powers, and this seems to be kind of one of the driving heuristics for what informed the way they set things up, is these medium powers give you a good opportunity to expand, as well as, you know, form customs unions that are large, do these sorts of things, that you're not just bricked by these enormous powers sort of thing. Overall, you know, the prestige seems a lot more level, particularly once you get down from the first 3, or, you know, Jing and Qing are inflated by the fact that they have all these peasants. You know, once you start to get down here, it's a lot more level in terms of like where people are at in terms of the prestige, also GDP. You know, it's not these huge differentials. There's a lot of middling strength powers, and so I think that this can give a good gameplay experience. If the history itself is not what's drivingly or super important to you, then feel free to give this mod a shout or a try. It's the Divergences mod. It's available in the Steam library. You just need to search for it in the workshop. And other than that, have a good day.